record, which you probably just heard. Um, we kind of did introductions. Like I said, you can write it in the chat. I will monitor the chat during breaks. Since it is just me, it just helps me stay on task and get through the material that we need to get through today. Um, yeah, sorry, I'm going to have to skip these two. Okay, first things first, we always want to make sure that people serving in our program, any organizations partnering with our program know how to say AmeriCorps correctly. So it is AmeriCorps, like Apple Corps, Peace Corps, the core of the earth. AmeriCorps is alive and well. This is a very old little graphic that AmeriCorps created many years ago, but it's still very relevant in the way that we say AmeriCorps when we are introducing ourselves to others. So yeah, it's not AmeriCorps. It is AmeriCorps. That P and S are silent. A little bit about Homes for All. So our program's primary focus is to address affordable housing crisis, the affordable housing crisis through housing development, repair, and provisions to housing and homeless services. So we do that in different ways by partnering with different housing organizations across the state. And I mentioned briefly, but we operate two separate AmeriCorps programs. So the program that you are enrolled in is our AmeriCorps State National program. AmeriCorps State National was created in the 90s under the Bill Clinton administration. And so it provides Americans with the opportunity to give back to their communities. Vista is another branch of AmeriCorps that we program that we operate. Vista stands for Volunteers in Service to America. And Vista's focus is on social justice and economic equity. And so with our Vista program, the easiest way to talk about the differences and how one is different than the other is our AmeriCorps program, the program that you are currently enrolled in and serving in. You're doing those direct services at your service site. Vista, they do more behind the scenes. So they do what we call capacity building activities. And while you may do some capacity building activities now, there is a restriction on what those capacity building activities are and the amount of time that you can be doing those. Vista is very much about building systems and putting systems in place so that organizations can have sustainable direct services like you are doing right now for your communities at the site that you are serving with. So those are the two programs that I manage. We call it both Homes for All AmeriCorps and then Homes for All Vista. So again, today is all about Homes for All AmeriCorps Direct Service State National Program. AmeriCorps at the federal level, and which also trickles down to state programs, they have some core values. So you may see things like getting things done. You may see that in like hashtags. That's a big one that AmeriCorps uses right now. And AmeriCorps members are doing that through direct services. We're strengthening our community. So we're bringing people together of all backgrounds to improve our communities. We're encouraging responsibility. And we're expanding opportunity. And so part of expanding that opportunity could be with that education award that you will receive at the end of your term when you successfully complete your year of service. But also, I want to add just professional experience as well. It doesn't have to be that you move on to, which is a great, I mean, that's why the education award is such a great benefit. but it can lead to other professional opportunities for you in your future. This is the AmeriCorps pledge. So when we get to the end, I will come back to this. If we were in person, you would repeat after me and we would do this pledge. Um, but it is a pledge that you and every AmeriCorps member takes at typically early on in their service term. And so in October, when our state service commission, Serve Kentucky, does a virtual training with us, this will also be part of it. But just take a couple minutes to read through what you are pledging to for yourself and your communities for the next year or so while you're with us. Okay. A little bit more about AmeriCorps and the different branches of AmeriCorps programs. So we talked about state national. That's the type of program you are enrolled in. You're doing direct services, serving your community members. Vista is all about capacity building, so strengthening those direct services.
Thank you. Cheese. Thank you.
At organizations. And then there's another branch called AmeriCorps NCCC. NCCC and like a little subcategory of NCCC, you may have heard of FEMA Corps. So it is really about like team-based service projects. So across the U.S., there are like in NCCC regions. And so those teams cover so many states in that region. And so if a natural disaster, for example, happens, those members are deployed to that region to help build back that community. So we've had NCCC members come to Kentucky when the tornadoes in Western Kentucky happened, the flooding in Eastern Kentucky. You know, there was some flooding most recently in April in more central Kentucky that's happened. So that's what like NCCC and like FEMA Corps members are doing. But it essentially is underneath that AmeriCorps stream of national service. Another thing about NCCC, there's specific age range for their members, so they have to be 18 to 24 years old. So yeah, we kind of like to say AmeriCorps is like the federal agency, and then there are these branches or, yeah, I mean, I guess we'll just leave it at that. I don't need to explain it anymore. The next thing I'll go into is you've probably already started picking up on some of the terms that I'm either using or others at your site are using. So when I'm referring to you serving in our program, I'm going to refer to you as the AmeriCorps member. You are not an employee at your site, you're not a worker, and you're not a volunteer. You're in this very unique position, and you are enrolled as an AmeriCorps member. Where you are serving, that organization is called your service site because you are committing to your term of service. So we do not call it a job. It's not employment. It's not a work site. Service can definitely lead to employment. But right now, while you are enrolled in our program, it's not. And so where you are serving the majority of your hours, we call that your service site or service organization. You may also hear me say partner site because this is a partnership between the AmeriCorps program and the site that you're serving with. Position description. So if you think back to your enrollment and your onboarding process with me, one of the last documents that you sign is your position description, and it does look a lot like a job description, but because this is not a job, we do just call it a position description. And so We use specific language written into our grant that we use for our um, allowable activities. That's what your supervisors and your site pulled from to create your position description and how many or what percentage you would be doing something like, for example, if you're doing 25% of your position is helping provide rent and utility assistance to individuals. You know, you see that on your position description. When you get to like the nuts and bolts of your position description, that's all talked about and you're trained on when you're at your site, through that first week, weeks or months into your position. But um, lastly, we talk about the payment that you receive during in return for your service, your living allowance. So that's what you get every other Friday deposited into your bank account. We talk about that gross amount. So that amount that's for the year. That's tied to your hour requirement. We don't call it a salary or a wage or a stipend. I would say stipend probably gets used the most if living allowance isn't used when we're talking about that. And I understand, since it's not like a employment position, why people may think stipend, but we call it a living allowance. You will hear that often throughout your year with our program. So I like to share who's benefiting from AmeriCorps, and I think it's important to start by saying we are all benefiting from AmeriCorps. Most, if not all, AmeriCorps programs across the United States, we're working with vulnerable populations. So a lot of programs are geared towards students, education, tutoring, mentoring, promoting public health, housing, and other important services for youth or seniors across the U.S. And not only like to build off of that, your respective communities and your organizations are able to serve more people where you are at because they do have an AmeriCorps member. They have another person to help expand the services that they provide in your region or county. And then you as the member, you are benefiting from this because you are going to build on your leadership skills. Maybe you are kind of trying to figure out what's the next path for you. And maybe a year of service helps you do that. It helped me. That was kind of my path after AmeriCorps. Well, kind of before, but it led me to AmeriCorps for sure. And then you get to earn money for college if you want to go on and get a certification or a degree or pay off your student loans. And I think most importantly, being an AmeriCorps member, you are going to see the needs of your community and it's going to help you continue to be a civically engaged person. At least that's what my hope is, but I think it will be. A little bit of the history of national service. So I know I mentioned that AmeriCorps was created in the 90s under the Bill Clinton administration, but VISTA was actually the first program created in the 60s under Lyndon B. Johnson's administration. And so after that, AmeriCorps Senior begins in 1973, and then in 92, that's when NCCC was created. And so as you can see, At the federal level, they're like, well, we have so many different little like branches of this national service. And so they grouped it and created AmeriCorps, the agency, in 93. And so after the agency was created, that first group or first class of AmeriCorps members um, served in 94 across the US. Um, and then in 2012, FEMA Corps was created and lumped into kind of like a branch of NCCC. And then a milestone for AmeriCorps in 2016. At that point, 1 million people had served across the US as an AmeriCorps member. So what we're doing today, like I said, this is, different programs across the US, but mainly, we're going to talk about Kentucky. And so, primarily here in Kentucky, we have programs that focus on education. So, they are in schools across Kentucky. They're teaching, they're tutoring, they're mentoring. That could be, elementary all the way to high school. We have an environmental program as well. And also underneath environment, you can, go into that disaster prep or disaster response, which is a lot of what FEMA Corps and NCCC do. But we do have a program here in Kentucky that is called the IL Corps. And so they focus on environmental education across the state. I would say most of their sites, though, are in Louisville. Housing, that's us. We're working with individuals that are unhoused. We're adding to the supply of affordable housing. We're repairing homes. We may be working with veterans who are experiencing homelessness and just helping individuals become a little bit more secure. Health, we've got there in Kentucky, there are 2 public health corps. And so part of that may be helping, well, there's public health corps and then there's also senior corps. So helping with that independent living, medical care. Again, they could be working with veterans, helping with food security, just to name a few. So yeah, that's a little bit about AmeriCorps nationwide, but also here in Kentucky to kind of give you an idea of what other AmeriCorps members are doing across our state. Some fun facts. These are a couple of years outdated, so I do need to get new ones when they're made available. But at this point, over 1 million people have served in an AmeriCorps program nationally. I can tell you I've got an updated number for the 1.8 billion hours. Well, I have it specific to Kentucky, so sorry. So over $2.4 billion worth of education awards have been earned, and well over 35,000 service sites across the state. And so another big component too of AmeriCorps service is working with volunteers as well. So managing, training, recruiting those to come in and be in your communities at your site, adding extra support services to your service sites. This is our updated information from the 23-24 program year. So I know that our 24-25 program year wrapped up at the end of July, but those reports won't come out available to programs until a little bit later. So we had our progress report due this month. So I just wanted to give you guys an idea of what the impact is for AmeriCorps members serving. And so the most recent information during this program year, we had 783 partner sites across the state. We had 2.6 million hours served by AmeriCorps members Almost 70,000 kids and youth were served in Kentucky. Almost 400,000 pounds of food was distributed to families that needed that. Specific to our program, almost 2,000 individuals and families received housing services. And then almost 5,000 students had improved academic engagement. So those are some really powerful and impactful numbers. And that's just to show you that while you are at one site, you're going to report on what you are doing, and it's going to be factored into our annual reports. And it's amazing, what members are doing across the state to make sure that Kentuckians are healthier, they're more stable, they're safer. And so I think this is a really good time to just reflect on that with you all as you are starting into this new position. So this next slide talks about Serve Kentucky. You've probably heard me say State Service Commission. So Serve Kentucky is our state service commission. And so they oversee the annual grant competition that awards funding to AmeriCorps programs like Homes for All and other community service programs in Kentucky. Kentucky staff or Serve Kentucky staff, they determine what those social needs are for our state, and they help set policy and program priorities. They offer training and assistance directly to AmeriCorps programs like Homes for All. They also provide training to AmeriCorps members. And so that training, they do an annual training in the fall, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. They also help support the National Days of Service. They are out and about promoting AmeriCorps and the programs here in Kentucky. And so we have a program officer that oversees just like our compliance and kind of those federal policies that we have to follow, that programs have to follow, but they're here to support us. They're here to reflect on what Kentucky's needs are throughout the year. And organizations like HHCK will apply annually to show why our program is needed and why it's so important to Kentucky and the housing providers that partner with our program. So we have our AmeriCorps logo. I know you don't have your gear yet. We'll get to that soon. Usually at orientation, when we're in person, you pick up your gear then when you're with us. I promise I'm getting that mailed out. It just came in this week. So within the next week or so, you will have your gear mailed to you. But more importantly, AmeriCorps and the A really does represent many things. You may meet someone, if you're wearing your AmeriCorps shirt, that maybe they served in the Peace Corps 30 years ago or something, and it sparks a conversation about what they did overseas in their service. And you can talk about what you're doing currently in your service. I think it shows that people are passionate and you want to have that connection to other people serving in AmeriCorps programs, but also your community. And so again, AmeriCorps is all about making a difference and helping strengthen our communities. I kind of just said all of that, so I don't need to do that. Onto AmeriCorps gear, clothing. So like I said, our gear was shipped and delivered. So I will be getting that out to you guys. I know last call at the end of our monthly member call on September 15th, I briefly mentioned this. But if for some reason you would like your gear to be mailed directly to your home address, shoot me an email. If I don't hear from you, I am going to send it to your site and have it labeled, to you. It's the easiest way to get things to everyone, but if you prefer it get mailed to your home, and that just could be because of it's other factors. It doesn't really matter. Whatever your preference is, you just let me know if you want it sent to your home or if you want, and if I don't hear from you, I'll send it to your site. Things that you will receive from us, you probably think back to that emergency contact form, but it did include like the size t-shirt that you like to wear. So you'll get a t-shirt this year. It's called Vintage Royal Blue. Last year we had red. HHCK colors are navy and red, which go with AmeriCorps, which I really like. And so we stick to like blue and red. And so that's something that I've decided year to year, we'll just kind of go back and forth between blue and red. Last year we were red, so this year our shirts are going to be blue. They're really soft. I really like them. If you're around for like a lighter blue, I think some people were. It's a little bit darker than that, but it's really soft and I like it a lot. So everybody will get a blue shirt. You'll get a lanyard, you'll get ink pens, you'll get stickers, little notepads. So you'll get some bags, so, hand sanitizer. So you will get things with um, the logo on it. Some people get really creative. And when you have like your desk or, your respective workplace, if you'd like to print out the AmeriCorps logo, um, you can do that. I've had people do that. I have stickers on my desk or on my office door, get creative with it, put it on a bulletin board. If your site, um, orders you a name tag or business cards or other printed materials, we just ask that you include the AmeriCorps logo. That AmeriCorps logo was sent to site supervisors when they had their site training in July. So they have it. If for some reason you need it or you would like it, I can send it to you. You just reach out to me individually. We just want to make sure that you're clearly identifying as an AmeriCorps member. Again, I do not expect you to wear your Homes for All AmeriCorps shirt every day. If we get together in person, I will always send a reminder, please bring your AmeriCorps shirt or something that has the AmeriCorps logo on it. So like I said, we just want you to have the AmeriCorps logo so you can clearly identify as an AmeriCorps member. I don't really need to go over that. We already did. Something I like to add about Homes for All, our little catchphrase for Homes for All is building homes, building opportunities. Not really much more to say after that. But our program is led by the Homeless and Housing Coalition of Kentucky, HHCK for short, because that's a mouthful. I manage and oversee our AmeriCorps State program, which is what you are enrolled in, and our AmeriCorps Vista program. On top of those two programs, HHCK manages supportive housing programs and permanent supportive housing vouchers for individuals who were considered to be chronically homeless. And then our executive director, Adrian Bush, who most of you heard from, was it last week? On the 15th of this month about housing in Kentucky. She does all of our advocacy work and education across the state. We want to make housing safe and affordable for every Kentuckian. And so Adrian does a lot of work at the federal and state level to make that reality true, and ensure that there's funding that's coming to Kentucky so that we can make sure we are serving our most vulnerable uh, groups of people. So that's a little bit about HHCK. I will say we're statewide, so meaning we can represent 118 counties. Fayette and Jefferson, they have their own COCs or continuum of cares. So lead agencies in those two counties. But we do work very closely with Fayette and Louisville or Jefferson County. So it's all kind of intertwined. It's just kind of how funding goes along. This little map shows where our program is across the state. And so this is for both our AmeriCorps State and AmeriCorps Vista programs that Homes for All has. So you will see your specific site's little logo in the county that you are in. And so as you can see, we're statewide. We are a lot of our programs are a little bit more centrally focused in the state, but we have partners out in Western Kentucky, Northern Kentucky, and Eastern Kentucky. I think it's important to, as you are thinking about what this year of service is for you and what you want to take out of it, I think it's important to know up front that this may be an opportunity for you to do things that you may not ever get to do again. We hope that you are building on your skills that you have and kind of help you work outside of your comfort zone. A little bit about my experience. I was so nervous when I started as an AmeriCorps member 10 years ago. And I was shy. I did not feel like I had the confidence in myself to talk to groups of people. And now that's a lot of what I do in my job. And so I like to give AmeriCorps credit for that. I would have never built those skills in myself if I wouldn't have started out as an AmeriCorps member, representing Hope's Wings and Homes for All and leading on into the other positions that I held after service. I think it's important to know your boundaries because boundaries are important, but there may be times where you're not working a typical 9 to 5. So for example, the agency that you're with, maybe they have like a large volunteer group coming in over the weekend to help get the walls up in a house. I know your sites are going to give you plenty of notice for things like that. But just know sometimes you may not be working that schedule. Sites know how to like flex your time if you need to. Say you have like a volunteer project like that on a Saturday, and maybe you want to take the next Monday off. Your sites are going to work with you, but there may be times during the year where it's not going to be your set 9 to 5 or 8 to 4 or 8 to 4:30, whatever your schedule may be. And so I think it's just good to know that up front. I'm very confident that your sites talk to you about that too. Typically you will sorry, did you hear me? You will serve a very set schedule, but events do happen and we want you to participate in those and see maybe another side of the organization that you don't typically get to be involved in on the daily or on the regular. So that kind of leads into really with any experience that you have, you're going to get out what you put in. So if you're given 50%, you're going to get out 50%. If you don't want to participate in those activities, when we get together, that's totally fine, but it can be very frustrating hearing people be like, well, we never got the chance to get together. Well, we did, you just chose not to participate. And I hate to be like so direct about that, but yeah, you're going to get out what you put in. I think service is so important to our communities, and you play a huge role in that. If you go back to the numbers from that slide that I showed you from the AmeriCorps programs, years 23 to 24, those numbers are huge and they're only getting bigger. And that's, well, that we could go into on a whole different rant about that, but I'm not going to. But it is so important, and you play such an important role in making sure that people are getting the services that they need or connected, whether it's from your organization, but maybe you connected them to a better community service for their needs. And that's just as important. Um, People are depending on you, and I say that not to add any additional stress to you, but that's what service is kind of about. You have committed to this year. I think it's good to have people depend on you. Your sites are one, they are expecting you to be there for that set schedule that you guys have agreed upon. Those expectations for the year and what your site is looking for and what you will be doing. Whether you started last week or a couple of weeks before, it is very early in your position, but it's going to you're going to start feeling so comfortable and confident in yourself, and it's just going to be an overall good feeling. um, and lastly, not lastly, but something to end on this slide is just be present and give your best effort. That doesn't mean that you have to give 110% every day. Your best effort, it's different. It's going to be different daily. It's going to be different weekly. It's going to be different monthly. I know service is hard. I did it. I'm continuing to do it as I operate these two programs. Um, but be present as you can. If for some reason you're having a difficult time, that's why you have the support of your site supervisor or others that you may be working with on your team. And me, I know that I'm not there daily to see you guys, but I'm just a phone call away. I'm just a text away. And if you just need to vent, I'm here to do that. In previous years, we had a member coordinator who handled a lot of those conversations. But right now it's just me, and I am always here to just be an ear for you to just kind of vent out any frustration that you may have. And it doesn't even have to be service related. If you're just having a really crappy day and you just need somebody to objectively hear what you're saying, I can be that person. Um, some things about being an AmeriCorps alum. There have been studies to show that after a person does a year of service or more than 1 year of service, they're more connected to their communities. They participate in community activities. So maybe that could just, I mean, part of that is they're more aware of what's going on in their areas, or they have a better idea of how to get and be more engaged in those activities. And a lot of times AmeriCorps alum choose to be in that public service type of career compared to other career paths. So I'd just like to we're getting close to the end of this section. I just want to say, be present. These are some previous pictures. Ask questions when you need to. There's no such thing as a silly question. If you're not going to ask it, or if you ask it, it's likely that somebody else has the same question and they're very thankful that you've asked it. And just connect. I'm hoping we can get shortly, not shortly, but in a couple months, we'll start getting connected with like our Martin Luther King Jr. project. And so I'm hoping that you get connected with some other members serving near you. And so you do feel a little bit more connected, not only to your site, but the AmeriCorps program as a whole. I hope you guys see some familiar faces. um, Here's important contact information. So HHCK, we have our website. Excuse me. That's where I put a lot of our just documents and like fillable PDFs and things like that. So it's updated regularly. I need to update it right now, so don't look at it right now. America Learns, you guys are getting familiar with America Learns. That's the site where you submit your time for the week to your site supervisor to approve and review. And then My AmeriCorps, if you think back to the enrollment that you had to set up, you created your My AmeriCorps account and you completed that enrollment form I submitted to you so that your citizenship could be verified. You will come back to the My AmeriCorps account. So that is not going to be a account where you just like forget about it. That's where your education award will be held when you successfully complete your year of service. So that is an important website to bookmark or star, whatever you need to do. Email addresses, the Homes for All email goes directly to my email, but I think it's important to include it as well because I include it on my emails to you guys when I send out like monthly reminders and things like that, just so if anything were to get lost, I can also go there and find it. But that's my email. You guys are all very familiar with that. And then my direct office line and extension. At this point, though, if I call you, it probably comes from my direct number. And that I should have put it on there. I don't know why I didn't. But that's the number that like you can text if you need to get a hold of me too. So I can be reached in many different ways. And I think that's a good thing. And this is the last slide for this section. We have a Homes for All AmeriCorps Facebook page. I should have taken Twitter off. That's not really active and it's not even called Twitter anymore. That's my fault. But we do have an Instagram as well. I forgot to update this, but we have, instead of Twitter, we upload our trainings to our Homes for All YouTube page. So when you get that link, like the link from our September monthly member training, those are all on our Homes for All YouTube channel. And so you can scroll through there and look at some of the other trainings or other things that we've recorded that may interest you. But those are the three things that we use the most. And again, your typical email and phone text to stay in touch with everyone. I think that's the last slide for this one. It is. So I'm going to quit sharing my screen really quick and I'm going to check the chat so that I can make sure I'm seeing what I need to see or if there are any questions in the chat. Sonia or Lola asks, what is the ratio of the number of service members to the amount of service areas in Kentucky? That's a good question. I don't know, but I know that I could probably get that answer from our state commission. So I'll be sure to copy and paste that question and get back to you, Lola. Um, okay. Well, Sonia, thanks for being like our facilitator of the chat. Let's take a little break because I know I just kind of went through about an hour or like 50 minutes. So would everyone be okay with like a quick 5-minute break this time and then we'll get started at 1:55 with the next section? Okay. Like I said, it's very relaxed, get up, walk around, whatever you need to do. But I'll get started at 1:55 with our next content. Start the recording. Okay. So first we're going to go over your member service agreement. So that was part of your enrollment packet that was sent to you, whether that was scanned and emailed to you, or if you completed it through Signwell and we captured your information electronically. The member service agreement is really a big chunk of that enrollment packet. And so it includes your the terms and conditions, the rules of serving. It includes our policies, basically everything that we are talking about. I'm pulling from your member service agreement. Um, like I said, it's already been completed by you. In that first paragraph of that member service agreement, it does talk about how AmeriCorps is not employment. So it's important to know if for some reason you leave your service term, unemployment compensation does not apply. Um, that's not just like specific to the Homes for All AmeriCorps program, that's any AmeriCorps program in the US. Um, your member service agreement is in effect for your entire term of service. So if you started on September 15th, that would be your start date, and then it would go through August 31st. Or in some cases this year, some people, their terms of services are like shorter. So you may have a different end date. For example, I'm just going to call our HDA members out. You guys have a more condensed term of service. So you started at, here in September, and then your terms will end at the end of May. And so that is the time frame that I am talking about. So from your start date to either your end date or the end of the program year. Most of our positions do end at the end of August so that you have that full amount of time to complete the hour requirement that's tied to your position. Member eligibility, well, all of you guys were eligible, or you would have not made it to this orientation. You would not have been enrolled in the program, but I think it's important to know what member eligibility is that programs have to look at and follow at the federal level. The big component of member eligibility is typically that those background checks. So I don't really feel like I need to go into any more detail about member eligibility because you guys are all eligible. Your position description. So I know last slide deck we talked about those terms that we use. So on your position description, it lists the allowable service activities. So that those activities are written into our grant. Those are approved AmeriCorps activities at the federal level. Um, your site pulls directly from that document to create your position description. It also lists your term of service. So it has your start and your end date on it. It also lists your benefits that are outlined in your member service agreement. It talks about those eligibility requirements like on the previous slide. And there are 3 signatures, your signature, your site supervisor signature, and my signature. I'm going to handle questions in the chat just like I did last time. At the end of this, I'll look at the chat and answer any questions. Next, we'll go into what would be called an unallowable activity. So that doesn't mean that it's not necessarily allowable and it's not prohibited. So what that means is if there is an activity that's not on your position description, but you're doing, and it is part of like our allowable activities, please let me know. I forgot to take Valerie's name off of this side. Um, anyway, you'll need to let me know. And that's because it may be something that's still allowable. So maybe when your position description was created, your site and your supervisor didn't think that you would be like going out and about and representing the organization at like career fairs or going to schools and talking about the services that they provide. And now you are like, you're there and they're like, you know what, we do want you to be going out and representing our organization at these events that we're signed up to attend. That's an allowable activity. I just need to know, and we just need to add it to your position description. What would be examples of like an unallowable activity though would be like volunteering at an animal shelter. That's a great that's great. I love animals. I'm sorry, I don't even know why I'm like stuttering or like losing my train of thought. It's just not allowable on our grant. Volunteering at an animal shelter is not written into our grant. Um, I also list the example of like cookie meals for those experiencing food insecurity or like mission trips with churches and other groups. Again, these are all really great things to do. They're just not written into our grant unless we have a service project coming up and maybe you do want to go make a big pot of chili and serve at your local men's shelter that provides a warm meal every day from 12 to 1. That would be fine because you're doing it as a service project. We've talked about it, you've let me know, like that's totally fine. But if you have something like you typically go on a mission trip with your church or something like that, you wouldn't be able to count hours towards your hour requirement for doing that. Again, those are all really great things. I think it's just important to know what that means in regard to your term of service serving as a Homes for All member. Terms of service. I wish somebody took count how many times I say terms of service when I do orientations. So our requirement, we have 3 different hour requirements this year in our program. We have some 1,700 hour members, we have 1,200 hour, and we have 900 hour members. So what that means is, depending on what hour requirement you are, you have to complete that in order to fully earn that education award or be eligible to serve again if you choose so. Serving a second year of service or a third or a fourth term is not what we are talking about. You know what I mean? Like, those are all great if you choose to do so. It's not an expectation. Your schedule is determined, your exact daily schedule is determined between you and your site supervisor. And I would say at this point, everyone knows when they're supposed to be at their site and when their day ends. For our 1,700 hour member positions, that's typically about 37 and a half hours per week or 40. Some of our organizations operate on a 40-hour week. And our site and our members serve that amount of hours a week as well. Or if you are in if your term of service is like a shorter, so like I know I mentioned, I called out Housing Development Alliance's members. So your all's terms of services are from September to May. So your average weekly number of hours that you have to serve will be a little bit higher than somebody who is using the full September to August term of service to complete that 1,200 hour requirement. If for some reason you do get off track though, you may need to serve more per week to catch up. We will definitely be communicating at that point. So your supervisors know that your positions have that hour requirement that are tied to it. Your timesheets have to be reviewed by me as well. So I look at those weekly after they're approved by your site supervisor. So we're all going to be on the same page as to if for some reason you were to get off track. We can make a plan and help you so that you're not getting towards the end of your term and you're like, this is an exaggeration, but maybe America Learn says you need to serve 50 hours a week. And like that, we don't want that to happen. And at this point, you guys know your timesheets are submitted weekly. So after your week ends, that following Monday, you will have the ability to go into America Learns and submit your timesheet to your site supervisor. When we've talked during that onboarding process and, as you're reviewing the onboarding enrollment packet and on your position descriptions, there are some events that require your participation. And so the orientation is this, you're doing it right now. So thank you for attending. Another thing we will talk about that will fall within your term of service is the Kentucky AmeriCorps Accelerator Training. This year it's virtual. And so when that information is given to programs from Serve Kentucky, we will make sure you have the Zoom link and everything to participate. It's a really great professional development opportunity, and it's offered to all Kentucky AmeriCorps members. There will be some days of service, so you may have already caught on that MLK Day is a day of service. You probably saw that on the program calendar in your member manual that I sent out yesterday. That's just to name one of those days of service. Our spring service project that typically happens in April or May. We partner with one of our construction sites, and so we're helping either do a repair project or a new home build project. We get together, and so The construction component of our program is we don't have that many positions compared to our more of our like case manager positions. And so I think it's a really great opportunity to get out and do something that you're not doing every day. I just love it. It's my favorite. I loved it whenever I was a member, and I love it now as program director. And then lastly, we will have our end of year training and celebration. That date will be determined, but it will be this summer. I would like to keep it anywhere between early to mid-July. It would be after the 4th of July holiday for sure. I know a lot of people take time off around that time, but you can go ahead and kind of have an idea that sometime in July we'll get together and celebrate our program's accomplishments for this year. We will have monthly trainings. They will happen on or around the 15th of the month. So if the 15th falls on the weekend, we will, you'll know that the monthly training will be scheduled on a different day. So really some takeaways that I would like for you to have from this, if you can't participate in something, we may need some supporting documentation to show that. And that's because these events and trainings, they're written into our grant. And so we are responsible for our members participating and being with us for these. So you may just need to communicate with me and provide some documentation, and that's okay. But, you know, I want you to be there, is what I really am trying to say. Another important takeaway is you can't serve at your site instead of attending the training. So if you don't want to come to our spring service project, and I should add, it's not just construction. We also find other services for people that want to be with us, but maybe don't have the ability to do construction, and that's okay. Again, we want to all be together and help out one of our partner sites. So you can't decide that you're going to be at your site serving that day. You will see a blackout day for that on your timesheet, and you will not be able to log hours. So if you have any questions, let me know. This is also written in your member service agreement. It's our leave for each type of position. So it's built into our service year, but I think it's important to know that it will only work if you are staying on track with your hours. I think now, if any of our returning members would like to write in the chat about your experience with how you stay on top of your schedule, but also, build in time to take off, that would be a great thing to add into the chat for our new members. So if you're in a 1,700-hour position, it's 10 sick, 10 vacation. For 1,200, it's 7 of both. 900, it's 5 of both. So for vacation, if you're taking just time off for, a personal day, we just ask that you schedule that in advance with your site supervisor. For your sick time, so if you have a scheduled appointment, we ask that you follow whatever guidance you are receiving from your site supervisor and how they handle that. And then, of course, sickness happens. You may wake up one day and you're feeling really cruddy and you got a really horrible cough and a fever. Just contact your immediate supervisor so that they're aware of what's going on. You can't predict when you're going to be sick, but it is so important in any situation or any type of position to let your direct supervisor know that you're going to need to take that day. These days do not count as like service hours. So it's not like when you log a sick day, it's going to still count like 7.5 hours to your hour requirement. But again, if you're staying on track with your schedule that your site and you created together, you'll be able to take time off, observe holidays that fall within our program year, and still remain like on track with your hours. And if a plan needs to be made, that's what I'm here for. That's what your site is here for, to help provide that support that you might need. Because again, life happens, and we are understanding of that. So this is just a good reminder of how to kind of stay on track if it's a typical year for us. The holidays through our program year, these are also listed in in your member manual. So Labor Day was actually the first day of our program year. So that wasn't even a day that you had a log time with just how most of our members started on the second because their organizations also observed Labor Day. Or maybe you were a member that started on Labor Day. That's agreed upon between you and the site. We all know when your start day was. Again, the other holidays throughout the year. When we get to like holiday season, if your site takes like an extended time off from being like in the office, I just ask that you contact me, you and your supervisor contact me so we can create a plan to make sure that service tasks are still being done. So that you are earning some hours and also earning that living allowance as well. But when we get to like the holiday season, we can definitely like remedy things to make sure that you are getting time off to observe your holidays, and also still serve at your site. I think another thing I needed to add to this slide about holidays is your site cannot require you to serve on a holiday that our program observes. You can choose to serve on that day, but your site cannot force you to do so. Okay. This slide mentions or lists member benefits for our 1,700 and 1,200 hour positions. So you have your living allowance, which all of our positions receive. 1,700 and 1,200 hour members are eligible for health insurance. The premium is paid in full by HHCK, so you would not see anything withheld from your living allowance. Health insurance through our program is available if a person were to lose their healthcare coverage after they start. You just let me know. I never want that to be the case for anyone, but if that happens, you can let me know and we can enroll you so that you do have healthcare coverage during the remaining part of your term of service. Or if you start the year without coverage, that was part of that enrollment packet, just letting us know that you are going to be needing that healthcare coverage at the start of your term. Child care assistance for children under 13 years and under. That's through AmeriCorps at the federal level. So if that's something that you would like to look into or you're interested in seeing if you qualify for that assistance, send me an email and I can send you the website and you can kind of do your research to see if you want to apply for it. You have your education award after you successfully complete your year of service. Loan forbearance in your My AmeriCorps account. This is for any type of position too. If you log into your My AmeriCorps account now that you are enrolled into a program, and say you are paying back on a federal student loan, you can request that that loan be put into forbearance during your term of service. So while you are actively an AmeriCorps member, I did it when I was um, a member, like fresh out of college. You know, I could not financially pay my student loan. And so it really helped me be able to put that loan into forbearance until I was done with my 2 years of service. And so I think that's a really great benefit. I will be, I'll go on to talk about support services. So each year, Homes for All enrolls in what's called the Member Assistance Program. So if you skimmed through your member manual towards the end, you saw some flyers about the member support, or sorry, the Member Assistance Program, and it's free for you as the member and anyone in your household. So if you have someone in your household, or if you are interested in mental health services, you can receive that free of no charge. And so could somebody else in your household. So those two flyers in your member manual show you how to get set up with the All One Health program, that they're the administrator of the program. And it also talks about the other different types of services that are available. So it could be like some legal services or life coaching. I think medical bills is as support that they can offer if you're, whatever the circumstances may be. Maybe you have a medical bill in default or something, they could help you work around that. So they offer a wide variety of things. And again, it's at no charge to you. It is completely confidential. So I don't receive any information stating that you are enrolled in it. Like, I don't get any names. The only thing that I get is that I had, like, for example, I may get a report if saying that I've had 10 Homes for All members participate in using this program. But that's all the information that I get. That's it. And so I think it's a great extra support to have for you and others in your household. And that's offered to any position, 1,200, 900, 1,700. Really the only difference for member benefits for between 17 and 12 compared to 900 or 675 hours is that health insurance and childcare assistance. I will say, if someone were to be in one of those hour requirements in a full-time capacity, so like half a year instead of the full year, they would technically be eligible for those benefits. But right now we don't have anyone in that type of position. If you have any questions about benefits available to you, I'm the person you want to talk to. The next thing I'll go into is our teleservice policy. So I think that this is pretty upfront. Our members may only engage in teleservice under these circumstances. You have written permission from your supervisor outlining the activities that you're going to be completing during your term of your teleservice. If there's severe weather like flooding or snow that would make it impossible to get to your service site safely, if your site closes down because everyone is sick, sometimes that happens. If your service site is closed and there's no other space for you to serve, kind of could be a same type of situation. Or if the member, and lastly, if teleservice is something that we have communicated about. So it's something that you and your site supervisor have informed me of. You will need to produce and maintain your completed work for that activity. And so you've probably noticed on your timesheets, there is a category that says teleservice, and then there's like a little box, and you can put what you completed during that time of serving from home. And then again, you want to follow what guidelines your site supervisor has given you for those specific tasks. We do have the right to deny teleservice hours if we're not notified about it before you serve remotely. If you have failed to include or maintain that written site approval with your timesheet, teleservice hours, if they're not indicated on your timesheet, so maybe you lump everything under like construction service and like that's not what you did, you work or you served from home, then we can deny that those teleservice, I can deny those teleservice hours. I've never had that happen, but it's there in case it were to happen. You can't produce a tangible work product or like a completion of what you reported on doing while you were working or serving remotely. Or if the service activity falls outside of our allowable activities, or it's not something that's on your position description. So you can only claim 10% of your hours as teleservice. And so that hour requirement, it's already built into our timesheet template. So it's not something that like you would have to keep up with. You would literally like if you meet that 10% requirement, then you just wouldn't be able to log any more time under teleservice. So it would cap you, is what I'm trying to say. It's not something that I would have you be responsible for trying to keep up with, or a site to keep up with. Okay. Excuse me. I'm gonna take a drink of water really quick, and then we're gonna go into standards of conduct. Okay. So our standards of conduct are really just the overall guiding document for what we expect of members serving in our program. And so this is a document that basically outlines the bare minimum expectations. A lot of it is about responding to communication, submitting your timesheets regularly, completing performance measures reporting, which we will talk about, attendance, and just like following policies and procedures. And we have what we have broken down to level 1, 2, and 3 violations of our standards of conduct. So this is a document that it is part of your member manual. It is part of your site manual. It's part of your member service agreement. It is everywhere. So it is, there are many places for you to find this to make sure that you understand what the standards of conduct are. I think I put this in the wrong place. I guess not. Well, I will just go ahead and because I know it by heart, a lot of like the standards of conduct for like a level 1 violation, an example of that would be like an excessive amount of tardiness or absences. And then after it states what our remedy would be. So if a person would receive like a verbal warning about it. If it happened again, there would be a corrective action plan put in place. If it happened a third time, then the program director has the right to dismiss the person from um, service, as an example of like a level one standard of conduct violation. Another violation of a level one standard of conduct would be, let's see, failure to communicate, repeated use of inappropriate or threatening language. Um, Level two violations are what we would consider to be a little bit more serious. So a level two violation, an example would be, failure to abide by confidentiality expectations from the program and service site, failure to notify Homes for All program staff of any arrests or convictions that occurred during your term of service. And how we remedy a level two violation would be you would receive a written warning from your site supervisor or program staff. I could suspend the person depending on what type of violation occurred. If a second offense happened, then I would release the person for cause from the program. A level three violation example would be, again, a little bit more serious. So, stealing, lying, intentionally falsifying AmeriCorps timesheets, reports, or documents at the service site, engaging in activities that may physically, emotionally, or mentally harm other members of Homes for All clients, service site staff, program staff, or the community. How we remedy level three violations would be that after I receive proper documentation or evidence provided by the service site, the member would be released from the program for cause. And so I think this is important to know because if it's on here, it's happened before in previous program years. And if something is kind of happening at the site level, it's really, like I said, it's our guiding document for expectations of people who are representing Homes for All, representing their site, and representing AmeriCorps and their communities. So, if you have any questions about standards of conduct, you can always talk to me about it, but it's also a very good document for a program director to have, because I'm going to handle these situations the same way for members across the board. I'm going to take one little break and look at the chat really quick before we go into prohibited activities, because that's typically a big portion. Let's see. James asks, Lola said, take advantage of the resources. Sonia said, for reports. I asked my site for permission to schedule an early appointment and serve the rest of the day. Yeah. Thank you guys. I'm seeing. I think this is Jamie. If it's under report one, it says, may I use personal or vacation day to serve on a mission trip? Yes, you would use a personal day for those days off. That's a great question. James asked if you could send out a step-by-step regarding how to request loan forbearance. Yes, I can. I do have a screenshot. It is pretty, I think it's pretty step forward, but I know I'm pretty familiar with my AmeriCorps at this point, but I can definitely send you a screenshot and it will help you locate it. My tip, if you request for student loan forbearance, you're not going to get notified by AmeriCorps by like email or by your loan holder that your loan has been put into forbearance. So you'll need to go back regularly to see if it was denied or approved. Mine was denied the first time, but I did it again and it was approved. So it may take more than one time for it to be approved, but don't give up, because you are eligible to have your loan put into forbearance. Another question, if you happen to miss a monthly meeting, can you make it up by viewing the recording? Yes, you can. They will be recorded. They'll be put on YouTube, and I always send out a summary for those who are not able to make it during like the live training time so that you can review and get up to speed. A lot of our monthly meetings will have like some professional development built in. So next month in October, one of our program officers, Andrew Stiff, he's going to talk to us about implicit bias. He does a really good training on that. And since we have so many new members, I think it's a really good time to come back to that topic early in our program year so we can kind of start to learn about what implicit bias means and how it can be used um, in our service. Okay, I'm going to move on now. I think I got everybody. If I didn't, just let me know. Um, we're going to move on to prohibited activities now. I know I sent out an email yesterday, or not yesterday, last week, that stated kind of like ways to maybe have or redirect a hard conversation while you are in service. And so I think it's important to know that while we are talking about prohibited activities, we are talking about when you are charging time to your position or to your AmeriCorps program. So while you are actively serving as a Homes for All member, serving at what site do I want to pick? The Gathering Place in Scott County. So this is what I'm talking about. I do think that prohibited activities they do have a purpose, and I think that they are here to protect us while we were in these types of positions. A lot of prohibited activities are around politics and religion. And right now, I mean, yeah, we're in a heightened political and religious time nationwide. And so I think it's just really important if anybody comes with you with a difficult conversation or a difficult question, while you are actively serving, take a minute, pause, and kind of reflect on either passing that question along to someone else or, let them know that's not something that you can speak on at this moment while you're representing an AmeriCorps program or your site, but maybe it's something that can be talked about when you are just Holly Dennis, not program director, if that makes sense. I know I've been talking a lot, which probably means you have read a lot of what these prohibited activities are listed on the screen. So I'm going to move on to the next slide. This next one talks about prohibited activities 6 through 8. So, participating in or endorsing events or activities that may likely include advocacy or for or against a political party, political platforms. Like I said, it is very geared towards politics and religion. Same with like 7 being engaging in religious instruction. Again, what you do on your own personal time, that is great. We just ask that this is not happening while you are on AmeriCorps time representing Homes for All and your site. Same with providing a direct benefit to a business organized for profit, a labor union, a partisan political organization. 9 through 11, conducting a voter registration or drive, or using AmeriCorps funds to conduct a voter registration drive, providing abortion services or referrals, or other activities that AmeriCorps may prohibit. But again, those are all listed on in the prohibited activities that we just went over. Most of your sites, because we have so many returning sites, have a poster that lists out prohibited activities. Our State Service Commission had a ton printed, and so we sent those out over the last several years. If you are at a new site, we will be sure when I do my site visits to give you one of those posters. I think it's important to put the prohibited activity sign in a shared location. So ours here at HHCK, because we also have AmeriCorps members serve with us, we have it by the copier machine, right above the copier machine while you're waiting or you're scanning and stuff, or you've printed out a 30-page document. You can stand there and you can read what prohibited activities mean. Another thing to note about prohibited activities is an AmeriCorps member, you can't engage in those directly on AmeriCorps time or indirectly by recruiting, training, or managing others for the primary purpose of engaging in one or more of the prohibited activities that were listed. Again, this is on AmeriCorps time. Okay. So a couple of years ago, AmeriCorps added, in addition to the prohibited activities that we just talked about, they also added census activities and election and polling activities. Again, you can't engage in that directly or indirectly by recruiting, training, or managing others for that primary purpose. Again, while logging AmeriCorps time. So, I say all of this because I know, I don't know. We are still learning and getting to know one another, but most of us, I would say, if we're serving our communities, we're probably pretty civically engaged individuals. We want you to be a civically engaged individual. What you do on your own personal time as a private citizen, advocating for awareness for things that you believe in and you are passionate about, that is great. And same with your worship services. Again, that's what you're doing on your own private time as a private citizen. We're just asking that when you are doing those things, if you decide that you want to show up to a rally and support a cause that means a lot to you, please don't wear an AmeriCorps shirt or a site shirt. Just wear, if your favorite band t-shirt, just please don't have on your Homes for All gear or your site gear or your name tag when you're doing that, because I will say we have seen someone's picture with an AmeriCorps shirt on at a rally, and we don't want to see that. So we say that because we do want you to be civically engaged. It just has to happen on your own time, and we appreciate that. So what we go into next is a little game. So I have some scenarios. Returning members, these are the same as every year, but they're good scenarios. So I will read it and then you can write your response in the chat. So during her free time, an AmeriCorps member has been frequently sharing her political position regarding the upcoming election on Facebook. The member's Facebook profile shows her wearing the AmeriCorps service gear issued by her program at the beginning of the service year. Is this allowed or is this prohibited? Correct. Yeah, it is prohibited. And it's prohibited because she's identifying on her social media platforms as a AmeriCorps member. So if you are vocal on social media, it would be my suggestion to just leave AmeriCorps off. And that's totally fine. Scenario 2, after a series of tornadoes destroyed several small towns along the Mississippi River, a team of AmeriCorps members were deployed by the federal AmeriCorps agency to engage in disaster response. As part of the disaster response, several members were asked by local pastor to recruit and manage, my screen manage volunteers who would provide spiritual counseling and prayer groups for the community to help citizens cope with the disaster. Is this prohibited or allowable? You guys are getting the hang of it. It is prohibited. Okay. Scenario 3, following the destruction of a local church, a team of AmeriCorps members would like to volunteer to help clear away debris from the site so reconstruction can begin. The members live in the community and they serve at the local nonprofit where many of their program staff and clients are members of the destroyed church. The members would volunteer on their own time with their families and friends to help the church. Is this allowable or prohibited? Yep. You got it. Scenario 4, the AmeriCorps members serving in a large after-school program want to petition the city's mayor. The members provide academic enrichment activities. The mayor is considering cutting subsidized public transit passes for youth attending after-school programs. The AmeriCorps members are concerned that their students will no longer be able to participate in their program. They argue that the city's budget has nothing to do with their AmeriCorps program and that they should be allowed to petition the mayor and earn AmeriCorps service hours for doing so. Do you guys think this is allowed or prohibited? Yeah. Yeah. So, like I mentioned, some common issues that can happen or problem areas would be that it's on your AmeriCorps time or you're wearing a logo or representing AmeriCorps. I know I've mentioned it too. The biggest concerns for most people are politics and religion. A lot of those, 11 prohibited activities that are listed are all around those two topics. I think that's why, it's important for you to know that these prohibited activities really are here to help you remain focused on your service and what you're there to do. And while you are on AmeriCorps time. If you have any questions about prohibited activities or want some more guidance, feel free to reach out to me. And like that poster said, you can always refer really persistent people to someone at your site or me, our program director. So, do you guys have any questions about prohibited activities before we go on to the next one? Okay. So there would be, I think it's important to know this for suspension from service. This is how we would handle these situations or reasons why someone would need to be suspended from our program. Again, these are not just specific to Homes for All. It is a federal policy that AmeriCorps programs have to incorporate into our policies. So we must suspend a member when they're facing an official charge of a violent felony or sale or distribution of a controlled substance, or they're convicted of possession of a controlled substance. We may suspend a member when they are charged with other misdemeanors or felonies, or there have been multiple levels of standards of conduct that have been level 1 standards that have been violated, or at least one level 2 standards of conduct violated. When a person is placed in suspension from service, you will not receive a living allowance or other benefits during that suspension time. Reinstatement is an option. So if a person's found not guilty, or if the charge is dismissed on the first 2 suspension bullet points, we can reinstate them back into the program. If an individual has been convicted of a first offense of possession of a controlled substance, the individual must be enrolled in a drug rehab program, and we can reinstate them back into service. If someone has been convicted for more than one offense of a possession of a controlled substance, that person must successfully complete the drug rehab program to be reinstated. Again, these are federal policies that we follow. Okay. The next topic that we'll talk about is what it means to be released from service for a compelling personal circumstance. So, programs have the ability to release a person or exit somebody from service for one of these reasons. So, if a member has a serious injury or illness that would make completing their term impossible, this now includes pregnancy, we can release them for personal or compelling personal circumstances. If there's a serious injury, illness, or a death of an immediate family member, and the member enrolled in the program is needed to care for that family member or take over the duties of that family member, we can exit them for the CPC status or compelling personal circumstance status. If a member is drafted into the armed services of the United States, and then again, some other circumstance could happen during the person's term of service that would make it impossible or very difficult for the person to complete their term of service. The program would deem that that is considered a compelling personal circumstance, and we can exit the person with this status as well. So if we get to a point, we don't ever want this to happen, but life happens, right? So, if this were to come up during the service year, we would need you to provide documentation, and at least 15% of your hours would need to be served so that you could receive a prorated education award. So your education award, if you are exited with a compelling personal circumstance, would be based on the number of hours you have served. So AmeriCorps does that math. And again, it is based on whatever your full education award amount is. And then they prorate based on the number of hours that you have approved, or that have been approved for you. I think it's important to know things that are not considered compelling personal circumstance. So if you just realize that serving at your respective site or our program is just, you're not happy, you don't like it, that's okay. I will not exit you compellingly. It's not a compelling personal circumstance. It's just dissatisfaction of the program. And then Sometimes that happens. Obtaining employment. So say you apply for a job, um, that would not be considered a compelling personal circumstance. There is one exception. So if you receive like state benefits like SNAP or Medicaid or child care assistance, if obtaining the employment um, disqualifies you for receiving those benefits after you start employment, then you can be exited compellingly. That again would require documentation from the DCBS office stating that your benefits have ceased because of, the salary that you would be making would make you ineligible for those benefits. Or enrolling in school, that would not be considered a compelling personal circumstance. Okay. The second release would be what we call for cause. So we talked about our standards of conduct and how those are remedied. And so a member would be exited for cause for, saying that, they are quitting the program without a compelling personal circumstance, which we already went over that. If you tell me or your site that you have no intentions to completing your service hour requirement by the end of the year, by the end of the program year, we would exit you for cause. If you're convicted of a felony or possession of a controlled substance, an obvious pattern of misconduct or poor judgment, if there are lots of level 1 or 2 violations and at least one level 3 violation, we would exit you for cause. And if just some really bad things keep occurring during your term of service, and lots of violations of our standards of conduct, we would exit you and note that you would be ineligible for future service positions across AmeriCorps. So if this happens, your benefits would stop and you would not have access to any portion of the education award. So, these are kind of like our worst case scenarios. But it's important to know up front, if something like this were to happen, how I would handle this situation with you and the site. The next part, we'll talk about fundraising and the limitations. So there are some examples of allowable fundraising. Your sites are very aware of the limitations and what's allowed and not allowed when it comes to fundraising, right? You guys are at nonprofits. We understand that fundraising is something that is important for their operations to continue. What would be an allowable fundraising activity would be like securing supplies or equipment that would enable volunteers to help build houses for low-income individuals. So if you went to your local hardware store and you got, them to donate hammers and whatever other kind of material you need, or your local lumber yard and they, donated so much wood for your project, that is an allowable fundraising activity. Typically though, at your sites, they will have a person already in a position to do those activities. Or securing financial resources from the community to assist in launching or expanding a program that provides social services. Or seeking donations from alumni of the program for a specific service project being performed by current members. So maybe you and some others are in an area where you have a lot of AmeriCorps alum and you want to do a service project for a homeless service activity and you want to put together like hygiene bags, that would be an allowable activity. What is not allowed is fundraising for just general efforts for that operating expenses for the organization. Grant writing is also not allowed in an AmeriCorps position, AmeriCorps state national position. I think it's important to know what types of grants the site that you're at um, administers. And they probably already have someone that handles grants. But I think it's important to know what that looks like. You just wouldn't be writing a grant application, and you definitely can't write a grant application to AmeriCorps. Um, no more than 10% of your hours can be allocated to fundraising, and you need to ask me ahead of time before you think you are doing something that's fundraising related. A lot of times you may be participating in that event, but you're not even being considered, what you're doing is not considered like fundraising. So a lot of times our members will attend fundraising events, but they're there to show and talk to communities um, about the services and the impact of that organization. So they're there handing out, flyers or pamphlets. They're out there talking about the organization. They're not there um, handling the money that people are, donating, say it's like a raffle prize or something like that. Like they're not in charge of that. But when in doubt, always ask me, always ask your site. But I am very confident in knowing your sites that they're never going to put you in a situation where this is happening. But always ask me ahead of time, just to be on the safe side. There's nothing wrong with that. And like I said, a lot of times you're going to these fundraising events because you are getting experience with being around other community leaders. But you're really just there to talk about um, the organization that you're serving with and what impact they're making there in your region. Some other portions of the member service agreement is our drug-free workplace. It lists our grievance and our grievance blah 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 grievance procedures for service sites and members, and then programs and members. So if a grievance ever comes up, you know exactly how it's going to be handled. It's right there in your member service agreement. Same with dress code. Make sure there's a logo around where you are typically at in your workspace. That's what I ask the bare minimum for. Or ask your site to have your name tag printed with an AmeriCorps logo on it, or business cards if you use those. Dress code. This is something that is very like case by case or site by site. So, and it could be even day to day. Maybe one day you need to have on something that's a little bit more professional because you are going to a college campus and you're talking to a group of social work students and you're presenting about what community action does for Fayette County. Or maybe one day you're out doing street outreach. Well, I don't think you're going to be wearing business casual while you're doing street outreach. You know what I mean? So, like, dress for the day and the activities that you are doing that day. Follow what your site is expecting of you. Voting, we encourage you to vote if you're able to do so. We cannot require you or influence you on how you do it. You can't count hours, but if you need our assistance, we'll make sure you have time to do that. And I'm sure your sites will too. Armed Forces Reserve, there is a 2-week active duty requirement that you can count hours. again, we would be talking about that. Jury duty. If you are called to jury duty, we encourage you to serve. You can accrue your normal service hours while you are doing jury duty or called to do jury duty, and you're able to keep those reimbursements that you receive. Does anyone have any questions about that last section of the member service agreement? Okay. Let me see here. Great. Like I said, our standards of conduct and your member service agreement and your position description are all guiding documents for your term of service and while you are in our program. Let's take, you guys tell me how long of a break you need before we move on to the next. 5 minutes? Okay. Let's do 5 minutes. Well, we'll get started at 3:10. Okay.